Hi, I'm Dr. Josh Axe, and welcome to this lecture on traditional Chinese medicine. In this lecture, I'll be going through how to heal by addressing the root cause of disease using ancient principles used in ancient forms of Asian medicine that have been around for over 3,000 years. We'll talk about things like diet and nutrition. We'll talk about acupuncture and cupping. We'll talk about how to heal the body with different treatments that have been around for a very, very long period of time. And one of the things I can tell you from using this in my clinical practice, my functional medicine practice in the past, and still working with people today, is I truly believe this is the most advanced form of personalized medicine in the world. And it's actually been proven by millions of individual case studies over time. If you think about our current medical system today, it's sort of proven through a lot of biased studies by pharmaceutical companies. It's really been around only for 150 years versus traditional Chinese medicine over 3,000 years. So you can see why it is so effective at helping people heal the root cause of disease. When we're talking about traditional Chinese medicine, they typically are not diagnosing people with diseases like we diagnose people today. People get diagnoses of hypothyroidism and fibromyalgia and diabetes and PCOS and other conditions. And the way that traditional Chinese medicine really looks at things is there are imbalances in the body. In order to heal, we simply need to bring the body back into balance. That's one of the most important healing ideas when it comes to traditional Chinese medicine. So let's dive in and talk about some of those principles. Well, first principle is all about, again, bringing the body back into balance. And there was something in Chinese medicine called the 6 evils. And those 6 evils were when your body gets sick internally, when it gets out of balance, that's what causes disease. Let me give you an example of this. Today, much of our theories are based off the germ theory developed by Louis Pasteur. And that really states that, hey, what makes us sick is the bugs themselves, so viruses and bacteria or parasites, and also our genetics. Okay, so either you have bad genes or you have a bug, and there's almost nothing you can do about it outside of take a pill. What traditional Chinese medicine says is no, it's not about the bug, it's about your body. If your environment internally is healthy, then your body can fight off a virus, it can fight off bacteria, it can fight off parasites. And here's the key principle, this is critical. The body heals itself. Food does not heal you. If you get a little cut here on your hand, broccoli does not heal that. Turmeric does not heal that. The body heals itself. Now, an herbal or a food can help maintain and protect that area, and your body can use those nutrients as building blocks, but your body actually heals itself. Your body brings it back into balance. So really the key in using food as medicine is consuming foods and herbs and spices and fostering healthy emotions that help get your body in the type of environment to where your body can better heal itself, and that's the principle. So the 6 evils are this. Internally, your body can become too damp or too dry, too hot or too cold, too much movement can be happening called wind, or too little movement called stagnation. And so sort of imagine the body like that as your body gets out of balance. And by the way, why do we call it a cold today? If somebody has a cold or sometimes flu, why do we call it a cold? That comes from ancient Chinese medicine as your body is cold internally. So think about this. What are all of the ancient remedies for healing the common cold? Well, I can tell you, to heal a cold, you need to warm the body. So there are warming herbs and spices. Think about garlic, oil of oregano, cinnamon, ginger. These are all, cayenne pepper. These are all warming and fiery spices. I'll tell you a quick story. When I first moved to Nashville, Tennessee and opened up my functional medicine practice, I asked a patient once, I said, hey, what are you going to do for your cold and flu? Because I have a few tips. Because he was expressing his symptoms of a cold. And he said, I'm going to go home and do a hot toddy. Now listen, I didn't grow up in the South. And so when I heard this, I thought, I didn't know what a hot toddy was. But I went and asked him, and it's whiskey and it's honey, it's cinnamon. And I thought, you know what? Whiskey is actually the hottest of all the liqueurs. If you ever had it, it's very warming inside. And so listen, and I'm not saying that's the best remedy. But my point is alcohol, like beer is very cooling. Whiskey is very hot and warming. And so if somebody has a cold, one of the most important things you want to do is warm the body. Why do people drink a warm broth of chicken soup and a cup of ginger herbal tea? In fact, when I was sick as a kid, my mom always gave me 2 things, and you might have had the same. My mom gave me chicken soup and ginger ale. Now, unfortunately, the chicken soup had, MSG and, white flour noodles and all of this other stuff that isn't the best. And the ginger ale was essentially, and the other thing is if we didn't have ginger ale, she gave me 7-Up and had like 40 grams of high fructose corn syrup per serving. But the thing I tell people is her love kept me alive, right? So these positive emotions probably combated some of the bad food material. All that being said is this, is that throughout history, in almost every culture, when somebody was sick with a cold, it was soups, it was warming herbs and spices like ginger and cinnamon to help heal the body, to bring it back into balance to beat that disease. When we think of, so that's a cold, your body gets cold internally, you want to warm it up. The other thing is, when your body gets too hot. That's another word for it's a form of inflammation. We want to cool the body off. There are a lot of ancient remedies for that. When the body gets too hot, it can cause a lot of skin issues like rosacea and eczema. It can cause joint pain and inflammation. So those are some of the chronic heat conditions that can happen there as well. Let's talk about a few others. Your body can become too damp or too dry. Now, this is critical as you work with people who have digestive disease. Dampness, the word for that in Chinese medicine, or conditions that would be caused by dampness would be things like candida, right? If somebody sticks out their tongue, if there's a white coating, there's yeast overgrowth, that's a form of dampness. Think of dampness like this. If you have a basement that floods, one of the most common things that can happen is mold will grow afterwards, or if you get too much humidity in your air ducts in your house, black mold can grow. Why is that? Because it's the environment. When the environment becomes too damp, it causes overgrowth of microbes, especially things like yeast, fungal infections, and things like candida. And so one of the keys in healing people is helping reduce and remove excess dampness. So candida, by the way, yeast overgrowth can happen from your mouth all the way down through your colon. So that's very, very common microbial overgrowth. But people can also have fungal overgrowth in their digestive system. They can have mucus. So mucus and phlegm, whether it's in your nose or your chest like bronchitis, or in your colon, which happens with conditions like ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, mucus and yeast, that is dampness in your system. And so the way to cure and remove dampness, which I'll mention again in a little bit, but it is by consuming things that are bitter. In the Western diet today in America, Europe, Australia, we tend to consume a diet that is very rich in sweet and then after that salty. But we do get very little of bitter and sour and umami and astringent. We are missing those flavors, but bitter in particular helps eliminate and helps your body clear out all the dampness. Think about a herb like echinacea. Now, if you ever have echinacea straight or other herbs like dandelion or orange peel, they taste very, very bitter, okay? And so what bitter does, if you have bronchitis, for instance, and you take an herb like echinacea, what echinacea does is that bitter, it goes and strengthens the lungs, and that bitterness drives out the dampness. It drives the mucus out of your lungs. And so I hope that makes sense. And so that's what you want to do. And so in using food as medicine in the ancient Asian thought pattern, it's what we need to do is if somebody's body is too damp, we need to start to eliminate that. One of the things that happens so often today in our Western society is we're not getting the root cause of disease. People will say, okay, well, somebody has an issue like candida, let's just remove sugar. That's the cause. The cause isn't just sugar. The cause is dampness. So you've got to do more than just remove sugar from the diet if you're going to cure and help heal a condition like candida. Let's talk about dryness. Dryness, if somebody has dryness of skin, chronic constipation in certain cases can be a combination of dryness and stagnation, but dryness is an issue that tends to happen once they reach the age of 50, or for women, postmenopausal women, the body starts to dry out more. Part of that as well is due to the changes in hormones of estrogen and progesterone. But dryness in particular, the people most at risk are women that are postmenopausal, or in many cases over the age of 50. And in that case, you want to do a lot of foods that build moisture in the body, like bananas, like flaxseed oil, like fermented dairy products like yogurt and kefir. Those are going to help moisten the body and help like for skin, help slow the aging process of the skin. It's very helpful for that as well. A couple other imbalances in the body. We have wind. Wind is essentially a virus that actually gets into your body, or an invading organism. That's what wind is. And stagnation is where your body isn't moving enough. So for wind, you want to expel and get rid of it. And you're going to be doing that by taking things like antiviral herbs. I mentioned echinacea is a great one. Oregano, thyme, sage. Certain herbs and superfoods have antiviral properties that can kill virus. In fact, if you look at an herb like oregano, it has compounds like carvacrol, and thyme has thymol, and those have been proven in clinical studies to have antiviral properties there as well. So if you read about wind in Chinese medicine, that's going to help kill a virus but also expel wind. And then an issue like stagnation. That means things aren't moving through the body. In fact, a condition like cancer, one of the big things there is that your blood and your qi, which I'm going to get into those terms in a minute, those things aren't moving through the body. And so in Chinese medicine, another condition would be constipation. Things are not moving. And so there are certain herbs and foods and emotional practices that help move these things throughout your body. A few other terms that are so important to understand when it comes to traditional Chinese medicine is the word qi. Qi is spelled Qi, And qi was essentially known as your vital energy, your life force. Today we would call it, part of it would be like ATP. If you take a science class in high school and college, ATP, it's your body's energy production, and it's most closely associated with your adrenal glands. And your adrenal glands are essentially seen as the battery pack of your body. Your adrenals help charge all of your other organ systems. And so qi is really the difference between if we have a live body here and there's a dead body, okay? A dead body has all of its organs, it has its teeth, it has its bones, all of the things after somebody passes away. But what is the difference between a living being and a non-living being? And in Chinese medicine, it's known as it's your body's qi. And qi is seen through somebody who has a lot of vitality, a lot of energy. If somebody, sometimes as people start to age too, they get more rounding and that energy starts to decrease. That they would say in Chinese medicine, that person, their qi is lowering over time. And so qi is really an important concept of healing any and every health condition imaginable. And the most common form of treatment in Chinese medicine for low qi would be adaptogenic herbs. And so it's emotional stress is the biggest thing that starts to decrease somebody's qi. Conditions that are associated with low qi could be any form of fatigue, hypothyroidism, low testosterone in men, infertility in women. These conditions are known as being low qi. So adaptogenic herbals like ginseng, ashwagandha, rhodiola rosea, astragalus. These are all qi boosters that help boost those adrenal glands. Kind of imagine your iPhone battery or your phone battery is at 50%. We need to get it up to 60 and 70 and 90%, and then that helps fuel the entire body. Two other terms used in traditional Chinese medicine are yin and yang. Okay, it's, I think, correctly pronounced yin and yang. Some people say yin and yang. But when we're talking about yin and yang, yin has to do with more of your, think about hormone imbalance. It's more of the feminine characteristics, where yang is more of the masculine characteristics according to ancient Asian medicine. Yin is rest. Yang is work and doing things, right? You want to balance. You don't want to be laying down and not moving all the time. You also don't want to be working 24/7. There's a balance that's created in the body. This also correlates with night and day. It correlates with the forms of movement. Yoga is very yin building, whereas something like CrossFit is more yang building, and different conditions actually need more yin or more yang. So take, for instance, in balancing yin and yang, a condition like hypothyroidism is actually caused by a yang and a qi deficiency. So we need to increase yang. So those people with hypothyroidism, they typically are better off doing something like weightlifting than they are doing yoga, versus somebody that has a lot of emotional stress, they're working all the time, and they have a high degree of stress, they're moving too much. They are better off doing things like yoga. They're going to help instill peace and calmness and help balance those hormones in the body. So again, think of yin and yang sort of like hormone balance between a very yin hormone like estrogen and a more yang hormone in this instance like progesterone or even testosterone, to where they tend to have an inverse relationship like a teeter-totter and really balancing each other out. One of the ways traditional Chinese medicine heals the body and brings it back into balance, along with using food as medicine, is acupuncture. What acupuncture is, it's putting instruments and needles in different areas of the body that stimulate bringing energy and blood flow and healing to that area. One of the things that you may already know is that your actual physical body, your muscles are actually connected to different organ systems. So think about this. If somebody is having a heart attack, they will get pain up into their left shoulder. If somebody is having a gallbladder attack, they'll get pain up into their right shoulder. So we know that actually there are different areas of the body, the muscles that are connected to organ systems. So think about this. In Chinese medicine, if you want to stimulate and support the gallbladder, where do you go? You go to certain areas like the right shoulder. If you want to stimulate the heart, certain areas of the left shoulder. If you want to stimulate a place like your body's kidneys and your qi, you go to your low back. So there are actually different areas of the body that are connected to organ systems. So what happens in Chinese medicine, or acupuncture specifically, they will go to an area of the body, stimulate the area, and that will move energy and blood flow to an organ. I mentioned earlier a condition like stagnation, where things aren't moving through the body enough. Acupuncturists can go and place those instruments in different places, and that will then cause more gut motility to improve a condition like constipation. Now, in addition to that, there's an ancient principle, and this is one of my favorite things to teach on, and it's called like supports like. And there was a knowledge by ancient practitioners that they knew which foods were the best form of medicine for specific conditions based off of three factors: the shape of the food, so the appearance of the food, the flavor of the food, and the color of the food. And I'll give you an example of this. When you think about a walnut, okay, a walnut, when you first look at it, before it's cracked open, it looks like a head. Once you crack it open, it looks like you have a left and right hemisphere of the brain. Did you know that walnuts are rich in vitamin E, omega-3 fatty acids, and choline, all which supports brain health? And walnuts are probably the #1 nut for supporting brain health. Think about celery. Hold up a stalk of celery to your forearm. It looks like your bones. Do you know that celery is the most alkaline of all vegetables, and it's very high in electrolytes to keep your bones from losing bone density? Think about beets. You cut open a beet, it looks like blood. Beets are rich in nitric oxide, which actually builds your blood, helps people overcome anemia, and supports cardiovascular health. Think about carrots. You cut open a carrot, you look at it straight on, it actually looks like your eye. Clinical studies have proven carrots are probably the #1 superfood for eye health because they're so rich in beta carotene. If you look at an onion, onions actually look like a cell. They actually contain a compound called quercetin, which helps cleanse and restore cellular health and fight conditions like cancer. So it supports, again, cellular healing. When we're talking about a few others here, reishi mushroom. You can go online and do an online search of what a reishi mushroom looks like. It actually looks like your kidneys and your adrenal glands. It's known as being the #1 adrenal tonic for long-term health for your adrenals and supporting that energy system of the body. A few others, avocados. Avocados actually look like a uterus. They are rich in monounsaturated fats, magnesium, and potassium, all which support hormonal health. Olives, they look like ovaries. They contain unique forms of fats and polyphenols, which support fertility, as do figs. Figs look like testes. In fact, if you open up a fig, they have little seeds inside that look like sperm. In Roman culture, those were known for boosting and increasing fertility. Think about a coconut. Coconut looks like a head. On the inside, it's got all of this fat that is full of what are called medium-chain fatty acids, which have been proven to be the #1 form of fat to support neurological health, as your brain is made up of 60% fat and cholesterol. And then also we have just a few more here. Again, I just think this is so incredible. Thinking about kidney beans, of course, they look like your kidneys as well. And so there are so many incredible superfoods. And last one here are tomatoes. Tomatoes have 4 chambers. Your heart has 4 chambers. They're both red. Tomatoes are rich in lycopene, and again, have been shown in clinical studies to boost your heart health and fight heart attacks and strokes. And so I think it's pretty incredible that we know that there are these incredible foods that are in nature that I believe that we have a creator that made it obvious for us. Hey, you want to improve your brain health? Eat a walnut. You improve your heart health? Have beets and tomatoes. And so it's incredible that nature has told us by just the appearance of those. And by the way, there's many more, but I just wanted to have sort of that concise list there to show you that. The 2 other components are the color and the flavor of the food. Foods that are very sour in nature, those activate the liver. Foods that are bitter activate the heart channel. Foods that are sweet, we know, activate the pancreas and upper digestive system. Foods that are bitter or umami activate the immune system. And foods that are salty activate the kidneys and the adrenal glands. So we know that even the flavors do, as do colors, which I'm going to touch on as we dive now into the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. So the 5 elements is a health system that really is the first form of personalized nutrition, along with Ayurveda, which has the 3 doshas. But when we look at the 5 elements, if you've ever taken an Enneagram quiz or DISC profile or Myers-Briggs test or any personality profile, you'd probably be amazed, as I am, at how accurate they are at describing your tendencies and some of the emotions that you experience. And so with that, Chinese medicine did this over 3,000 years ago, and they have 5 elements which correlate with 5 personality types, which also correlates with 5 different ways of eating. And within those, it's actually more in depth. You could be more of a yin or a yang type of each one, so there actually could be really 10 types. But to keep it simple, 5 elements of Chinese medicine. So within the 5 elements of Chinese medicine, I want to get into each of the 5 elements. Before I do that, though, I want to share this with you, that within ancient Chinese medicine, it was known that emotions played a crucial role in your health. In fact, they really believed that your lifestyle and emotions were equally as important to the food you were eating on a daily basis. And let me give you an example of exactly how we know that different emotions cause different diseases. By the way, what a lot of people believe today is they believe that the reason I got an illness or a condition is because my genetics, or maybe because my diet. That actually has very little to do with what condition you come down with. What really has to do with it is your emotions. So think about this. If you have anxiety, what can happen? Or nervousness, your blood pressure goes up. So we know for a fact that anxiety and panic attacks and nervousness, that emotion that crops up, causes dysfunction, or it stresses your heart and cardiovascular system, giving you a greater chance of having that condition. Think about this, worry. If somebody worries a lot, they'll say, oh, I feel like my stomach is tied in knots, or they'll get an upset stomach. We know that the emotion of worry causes dysfunction and disease to build up in the digestive system. Think about a condition like fear. Fear, we know, puts your body in a fight or flight state, causes your adrenal glands start to pump out stress hormones and cortisol. Or think about a child that has a nightmare. They're very scared and frightened. That can cause them to wet the bed. So we know that the emotion of fear and being frightful actually causes dysfunction of the kidneys and the adrenal glands. Think about, why do we call somebody an angry drunk? We know that the overconsumption of alcohol causes liver toxicity, which then creates anger and vice versa. And then there's the emotion of grief. If somebody has a lot of grief, which grief is where something has happened in the past, it could be emotional abuse, physical abuse. It could be somebody had a dream and they wanted to accomplish something that didn't happen and they're still, somebody's living in the past. That sense of living in the past actually is grief, and it also connects with depression. And so living in the past causes dysfunction of your colon and lungs, which is your entire immune system. And so if somebody has a condition like autoimmune disease, the root cause of that emotionally is grief and depression. So as practitioners, one of the greatest things we can do in helping people heal is help them address emotional problems. Okay, so we've covered these emotions that are tied to the 5 elements. Now let's actually dive deeper into the 5 elements. The first element is the fire element. The fire element is associated with the heart, the small intestine, and really the whole cardiovascular system. Things to know about the fire element. The fire element tends to be most susceptible to the emotion of anxiety, and certain emotions like being overly dramatic or nervous tend to really drain the heart, raise the blood pressure, and cause dysfunction within that for that person. The thing to know about the fire element is certain foods are very nourishing for them, and it's foods that are red and brown. So think about beets and tomatoes. Think about coffee and dark chocolate. These foods are very, very nourishing to that element. So if you have a patient or a client that comes in and they have an issue related to the heart and you know that they're a fire element, then you want to make sure you are prescribing and recommending they consume foods that are going to really nourish that channel. So think about things that are going to be blood building foods like liver and grass-fed beef, green leafy vegetables, and then a lot of the red and brown foods. Again, the dark chocolates, the tomatoes, those sort of things, pomegranate, goji berries are going to be very, very nourishing in healing for that element. The next element is the earth element. Earth element is most closely associated with the organ system of your pancreas, your spleen, and your stomach, so your upper digestive system. We know that when they worry, the emotion of worry will drain that area or that organ system within the body. The foods that are most nourishing for the earth element are going to be foods that are orange in color. So think about Thanksgiving and those types of foods. So we're talking about butternut squash, pumpkins, carrots, even things like grass-fed beef. So things that tend to be a little bit red and yellow, but mostly orange, are going to be very nourishing to those people. Sweet potatoes is another example. Here's the thing that might surprise some people. A condition like diabetes is really most associated with somebody that has worry in those earth element people. So you would think like you don't want to consume carbs. You want to consume some carbs, just the right carbs. What nourishes the pancreas are foods that are lightly sweet, like pumpkin and carrots and sweet potatoes and herbs like cinnamon. But when somebody has sugar, it brings it too far and overtaxes that organ system. So as we're talking about the earth element, they're most susceptible to conditions like diabetes, excess weight gain, conditions like obesity, and digestive disease is something they're very, very susceptible to. So for that, having them consume a diet of a lot of orange foods, a lot of wild organic meat, and herbs like cinnamon and turmeric are going to be very, very nourishing for that element and that type. Next up is going to be the metal element. Metal element, in terms of what they tend to look like, they tend to be very strong people. They tend to have more squared off features, wider bridge to the nose, things like that. And so when we're talking about metal element, that's most closely associated with the organ systems of the colon and the lungs, which is your immune system. Your lungs are responsible for filtering out toxins, very important for getting qi throughout your body, energy throughout your body. Your colon is where over 80% of your body's probiotics live, your gut microbes. So you've probably heard the term 80% or 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. Well, most of them live in the colon, which is tied to the immune system. So in Chinese medicine, the metal element, by the way, metal element as a emotion, a personality type, they tend to be people that are very black and white, right? There's right and there's wrong. There's no gray area. They also tend to be very systematic. They tend to be very hard workers, very self-disciplined, but the emotion they're most susceptible to is the emotion of grief or depression, where something has happened in the past and they won't let go of things. They just will hold on to things forever, and that keeps them from moving forward, and it can cause issues that weaken the immune system. For those people, foods that are light yellow in nature, or foods that are light yellow, are the most nourishing to the immune system. Think about this. So for the immune system, if somebody has a cold or a flu, they want to drink a lot of chicken broth, not beef broth, right? Chicken broth. Why chicken? It's light yellow. It contains other unique compounds that beef broth doesn't. So foods that are light yellow are the most strengthening the immune system, including chicken broth, miso soup, ginger, garlic, onions, eat lemons. These are all examples of foods that really activate and strengthen the immune system. They tend to have an umami flavor. If you think about ginger and miso and chicken broth, they have that flavor that causes your body it causes your immune system to increase its own circulation. So very, very good for any immune issues, those light yellow foods. Talking about the type of the water element. Now my wife, Dr. Chelsea, she is a water element, and water elements are very much personality type. go with the flow, okay? Think about somebody in the Caribbean, right? We've been to the Caribbean several times. You go to Jamaica, and it's just things are more laid back, carefree. You just sort of go with the flow there, and they're going to be more attracted to even certain movement types like a vinyasa flow yoga. They're going to love they're going to love being in the water. They're going to be in their element there. So water elements also, in terms of a healthy emotion, they tend to be very, very deep. Okay, very deep people. They tend to be more introverted. They love reading books. They don't like big groups. When they come into the emotion that's negative, they're most susceptible to is the emotion of fear. Because the organ system the water element is connected to is the adrenal glands, the kidneys, and the reproductive organs. So we know that the emotion of fear causes the body to overproduce stress hormones, which then depletes the adrenals, but also the reproductive system. So if somebody is struggling with a condition like infertility, the inability to conceive, that really tends to be a water element issue connected, of course, to those reproductive organs and the adrenals as well. And so the foods that are most healing for water elements are foods that are very dark in color, like dark blues and purples, and sometimes very dark greens. So think about seaweed or blueberries and blackberries and raspberries, like foods that are really dark blues and purples. Berries in particular are very nourishing this element. Foods from the water, things like wild caught fish, and again, seaweed, as I mentioned, like nori. These foods are going to be very, very healing for that element. And the last element here is the wood element. I actually, in particular, am a wood element. Wood elements, in terms of physical appearance, tend to be leaner, higher metabolism. They call it a wood element because they would say they look like trees. Their physique tends to be wider at the top, gets more narrow. You can kind of see the veins, kind of like roots of the trees, and their arms in different parts of their body. When they are healthy and functioning well, wood elements are planners. They're known for leadership. When they're weak, though, or when their emotions get out of balance, they tend to be most susceptible to impatience, frustration, emotions like anger. And so those emotions, those negative emotions, cause disease and toxicity in the liver and gallbladder, your body's detoxification system, and also to a degree the lymphatic system as well. It's really, really important for those people to eat green foods and the flavor sour. So salads and sprouts and Granny Smith apples and sauerkraut, foods that are green and sour tend to be very, very nourishing to the wood elements there as well. Even things like celery juice would be good for that element as well. So as you can see here, the 5 elements, when you know and understand the 5 elements, you're then able to personalize a plan for those clients and patients that you might be working with. I think that is so critical. As we're talking about traditional Chinese medicine, what makes it so unique is it is the oldest form, along with Ayurveda, of personalized medicine, helping people heal using food as medicine, emotions as medicine, ancient treatments like acupuncture and cupping and qigong as medicine. And so really it was a holistic approach. And that's one of the things I want to encourage you with is as you start to work with clients and helping them heal and get well, you really want to focus on the whole person. If you open up a dictionary, the definition of health is health in body, mind, and spirit. And understanding that if you have a client you're working with and they are dealing with something from the past like unforgiveness actually affects 2 organ systems. It affects your liver and your gallbladder because it's a form of resentment or anger. You have anger towards someone from something they did in the past. That's correlated to the immune system. So if somebody is having these emotions, they cause toxicity, just like eating high fructose corn syrup or genetically modified organisms cause toxicity within your body. So it's important to understand how really caring for the emotional state. So one of the things I always prescribe and recommend for patients that they do things to foster healthy emotions along with creating a healthy diet. And so again, ancient Chinese medicine is a phenomenal way to practice to really get to the root cause of disease. And this is something I really found for myself and that I've used with thousands of patients over the years. One of the questions I often get is, well, Dr. Axe, I love hearing about the 5 elements, but how do I know which element somebody is? And here's really how you know. A few things to consider. One, it's important to know their element. It's also important to know the condition they're dealing with. When you know the condition or their health goals, then you can help better recommend certain diets and lifestyle practices to help them heal. With that, in ancient Chinese medicine, one thing that was done is you can essentially have somebody take a quiz. Now, I've done quizzes. I know that there are quizzes online from other companies where somebody can take a quiz to find out which element they are. I cover it in a book I wrote called Ancient Remedies not too long ago. But again, somebody can take a quiz and find out which element and type they are. I just want to encourage you with this. Most practitioners don't know this information. Now that you know this, you are more equipped than 99% of people out there and 99% of other health coaches to go out there and teach people how to use food as medicine and address the root cause of disease. Far too many people today in the health space are simply prescribing the same diet, the same food for everybody, when in fact, everyone is a unique individual and needs a personalized approach. And traditional Chinese medicine is the oldest form of medicine that really used and really took into account somebody's individual makeup, their individual DNA. So I just want to say, hi, I'm so excited for you to be equipped with this information now to go out and use traditional Chinese medicine and helping people use food as medicine.